With those
Yes.
regulators, I'm always wondering, so they're always like, "Let's sue somebody and just try to get some money." That's what it really seems like over
You
there.
know, I try to think the best of people, and so I'm just an optimist by like just by nature, and so I try not to think like that. But more and more, it's starting to seem like that is in fact the case. One of the things that I've been most shocked by, and I'm still shocked that this is actually legal, is that regulators have their own court. So when you're getting
Oh,
sued, you're not actually being sued in an actual court under like the U.S. judiciary system, where it's like, it has its flaws, but for the most part, it's pretty fair. Like you get a
yeah.
independent judge that's supposed to be unbiased. Like maybe there's a jury, things like that. You think that's what's happening, but that's actually not what's happening. So when regulators first sue you, they have their own administrative court. So basically, for example, like the SEC, within the SEC, they have their own court. And the people that work in that court, including the quote unquote judge,
I'm
like
like, "Oh,
works for the SEC. And they're supposed to
oh,
have this administrative wall, which is they're not supposed to share information. But let's be honest, like, do you really think they're unbiased? And that's the court you get sued in first. And then is it a surprised that like a lot of companies lose in that court or like they choose to settle. Like there's so many companies that just end up paying the fine and settle because they realize when they talk to their lawyers and stuff, like, what is my probability of winning in this sort of like fake court system that isn't really a court? And the answer is like next to zero. And
I mean,
so
look
it's
at
like, well, if
Binance.
that's the case, like, why wouldn't you
whoa."
settle? Right. So that's something I think the vast majority of people don't realize. If it was an actual court, like the open court that we are all used to, I think a lot of companies would actually fight it out in the courts because they have good arguments. Like, hey, we have data, we have evidence, like we don't do this, this is not a security, they would fight it out. But when they come after you and they're like, either settle for a lot less money or you go through our administrative court, which you're almost guaranteed to lose, and then the fine will be even bigger. What do you think those
Yep.
companies will opt to do? So that's kind of hopefully explains a lot of the weird things people see in the news.
Great explanation. I did not know that. And then it does, you same here. I want to think most people are genuine and kind, but then when I do look at Gary Gensler and the rest of them, I'm like, something's going on. Is definitely money related, and they want as much as they can get. It's very interesting. Christopher Change, you got something?
I was just going to say my son is starting to wake up a little bit, but I was just want to say if you could touch on what do you think the future of tokenized real estate will look like as regulation gets clear and as we continue to move forward in the space?
Yeah, I think you're going to have, unless, look, again, Congress could change the laws and regulators could issue new guidance. But as things stands, I think there will be likely two industries as it currently exists, right? So one is again this sort of peer-to-peer industry transactions, where it's not really regulated, where it actually represents the bulk of real estate volume, right? Like when people buy houses, they just buy from other people, like there's no regulator involved. And let's
Yep.
be honest, like nobody buys a house without thinking of it as an investment, right? Like if I told you, like, yeah, you get to live in this house, but you're guaranteed to sell it for less 30 years later, would you buy this house? Most people would say no.
Yep.
People's homes are their usually biggest investment and sort of like their biggest asset as they retire, right? And so that industry, in my opinion, unless they change the rules and laws around it, is always going to stay unregulated in that regards. And that's the industry that we want to grow in and we want to build in. As for this other sort of industry, like right now, there's REITs, there's funds, right? Like you can invest in someone else's real estate fund. They go out, do a lot of the work, flip houses or things like that, syndications,
Yep.
like new real estate developments, private equity deals, things like that. Those type of real estate related stuff. Um, as they stand today, they're securities, but I believe that tokenization unlocks a lot of efficiencies that would
Mhm.
be in a lot of these, people's interest to sort of adopt. So I foresee in the future there's going to be a second market that mimics the existing regulated ones, where they're securities, but they're just tokenized securities, and it allows people to passively invest with fund managers in private equity deals and things like that. So you're going to kind of have this sort of bifurcation, two sides of the real estate market. unless they decide to change and make everything a security or, or make nothing a security, which I don't think either case is likely.